Welcome to Meeting of the Minds, the interview discussion show that explores topics in the atheism-theism landscape in a civil and respectful manner. I am super pleased to have with me today BionicDance, also known as Kate Fahr, and we are going to be talking about a couple things, not the least of which I'm going to get her opinion on the new atheist, I'm using air quotes right now, movement and the atheist community, as well as a conversation that we had with Matthew 4:19. But before we even get into that, I just want to see how you're doing today, Kate.
Well, I have definitely been worse.
So that puts us a leg up. That's how I see it.
Glad to be here for what it's worth.
Excellent. I appreciate that. So let's get to the introductory questions. So I would like you to take your time and unpack these questions as much as you can, because I think that it's going to help me and the people that are watching and listening frame our discussion a little bit better the more they get to know you. So let's start with super basics. How would you identify or label yourself?
Well, if I had to label myself, I can't do it with just one word. I guess I'd have to say I'm a left-handed adopted multiracial lesbian atheist apistivist.
Nice. And if you had to explain what that meant.
Well, apistivist?
Yes.
Or all of it? Okay, apistivist,
I think
it's
I got
actually
the left-handed
a word.
part.
Well, apistivist is a word that I kind of invented myself. I looked up the Greek word for faith, stuck the A in front of it to negate it, and then evist to say a person. So an apistivist is someone who does not use faith as a method of knowing anything.
Okay. And so how would you describe your worldview to us based on the epistivist perspective? Or even broader than that?
Well, I look around at the world and I look to see what is actually there, or at least what I can perceive. And all I've ever seen is a natural world. Now, granted, there's obviously some information I probably don't have, but I'm going to work on the assumption that what I've observed is what's there, at least until I get that new information. And this, of course, informs a lot of my behavior, a lot of my decisions, a lot of how I look on the world and what's there. Since I don't believe there's a God, I've never seen any evidence of one, that does mean that morality is something that we have to come up with ourselves. And that's why if you look around the world, there are so many different cultures that have so many different kinds of moral statements, moral ideas. So obviously, it seems to me that our morality is down by a deity, and even if it was, that would have to be that deity's opinion on morality. So, that's just one point about looking at this natural world, that we make the rules ourselves, at least as far as our behavior. There's also the scientific aspect. Since the universe was clearly not created in, 6 days, there's a lot to learn about this place that, the knowledge just wasn't handed down to us. It informs a lot about my worldview. All of it, all those labels, well, except for maybe the left-handed part, that's just me. But all of those labels have something to do with how I look at the world, how I behave, how I interact.
Okay, so let's get a little deeper into that worldview. So would you grant any supernatural variables in your worldview?
Well, much like with the God, I've never seen anything that I could possibly classify as supernatural. The closest I've come is when I was very young, maybe 6, 7 years old. I had what I can only call a UFO experience, but I am not in any way saying it was a spacecraft. I am saying that object that I couldn't identify. I looked up in the air, I saw this thing, I don't even know what it was. Could have just been an airplane for all I know. But it was very strange. I actually made a video about it. So if you surf to my YouTube channel, you can see that. But that's the closest I've come to a supernatural experience. And if it was an airplane or was aliens or something, even that would be natural. I can't call it supernatural. So I've never seen magic. I've never seen sorcery, witchcraft, any of that stuff. It just, as far as I know, that does not exist.
Now, the discussion part of this is really supposed to start after the introductory questions, but you happen to hit on something that I haven't really discussed with my atheist guests before, and that is something that you just hit on. So I'd like to kind of explore that just a little bit, and that's the idea that if there are aliens, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are supernatural in any way, shape, or form. Can you talk about that a little bit more from your perspective?
Well, I'm not really sure what there is to say. I mean, they would have evolved on another planet.
Exactly.
They would have developed. I mean, if you look at the Ice Age and the Age of the Dinosaurs with our planet, imagine if that whole Ice Age thing had never happened and everything didn't, the world evolution, all of that didn't have this sort of slowing down period. It's possible that on this planet we'd have dinosaurs in spacecraft by now. I mean, there were how many millions of years that took place? But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know enough about the actual timetable of evolution to know that the Ice Age really had any effect. I'm talking out of my ass right here. I have to admit that. But the point is that there are aliens probably out there who've had a lot longer to develop than we have. So if they have spacecraft, they could have gotten here. They didn't say hello. Maybe they studied us the way new species we found. And this is assuming that they've ever come here at all. I don't know.
Sure.
So, but in no way can I call them supernatural. They're obviously natural just the way we are. They just had a different environment in which to evolve. That's all.
Right. Is it as Isaac Asimov or a science fiction writer that said that any new technology to the naive looks like magic? So wouldn't it be kind of that you're kind of tapping right now?
Well, kind of. I mean, I think that the operative word there is seem.
Yes.
I mean, we're perceiving it as something we don't understand, and so we might say it's supernatural. We might say it's magic. I mean, what if I go back to the Old West with an iPod or a cell phone or something?
Oh, you'd be a witch.
Yeah, exactly. So, the point is that even if something seems supernatural, there's no guarantee that it is.
Well, that's what I wanted you to talk about, because I've heard from theists, especially like some of the more Christian fundamentalists, that think that is like a killer argument. Oh, you believe in aliens? You don't believe in the supernatural? Those two things are, you have to believe in both if you believe in one. And I'm just like, no, that doesn't make sense. So I wanted you to articulate your position on it, because it might be, I like to use this term every once in a while, extra natural. Like, it might blow our minds that it is beyond our conception of nature as we understand it right now. But once we understand it, it falls within the laws of nature. So then it becomes natural. So it's not supernatural. It's not blowing our minds like a miracle would, that it only happens once and is not studied or validated or verified or corroborated. It might be just something that it's an unknown to us.
True. I'm not sure I can agree with the term extra natural. It sounds like supernatural with a different word other than super.
Gotcha.
I think I would have to call it, like, I don't know, maybe extra perceptual, because because that sounds like ESP. I'm just saying that we perceive and we don't understand it. So there would have to be another word for that, because extra natural sounds like supernatural to me. But I agree with what you're saying in principle. Certainly, it's just a terminology problem.
Sure. Well, speaking of perceptions, let's get a few more questions under our belt here, or a few more answers, more appropriately. So, what is your opinion of the Bible as a book?
The Bible, huh? Well, I only got as far as 2 Kings when I tried to read it. It is a terrible book. I mean, seriously, somebody once gave me another version of the Bible. It's what is this? The New International Version. And I haven't actually cracked this one because I was going through the King James. But I think what they did was modernize the language a bit. To make it easier for people to read in this day and age. But even so, I mean, there are a lot of stories that I had been told throughout my life where they have, like, the apple, Adam and Eve and the apple, Noah's Ark, the X's, all that stuff. And they made it sound like it was this big, epic story, like something out of Tolkien. And it turns out that it's just like a couple of lines for each of them, and it's nowhere near the big deal they made it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And honestly, maybe it's the stuff that happens after Second Kings when when you get to like the New Testament and Jesus and all of that. Maybe that's when it starts to get more like what people use as their worldview today, their religious worldview. But what I read was really just a bad fantasy story. There was no morality in there. There was no do this, don't do that. Seriously, I could write a better story than that, a better fantasy story than that. Really, it's a terrible, terrible book.
All right. And so getting a little bit more into the New Testament, do you think that Jesus really existed?
Well, that's kind of a multiple part question, isn't it?
Exactly.
If there was a guy named Jesus who was going around preaching to people, I think that could have happened. I'm willing to concede that's a possibility. Now, was he doing the miracles, bringing people back from the dead, loaves and fishes, all of that stuff? I'm going to say no. But that's just because I don't believe in the supernatural. I've seen no evidence of it. So I'm fairly convinced that when people wrote that down, they were embellishing at best.
Okay.
If not outright making stuff up.
And what led you to your current beliefs?
Well, it's hard to say. A long time ago, a really long time ago, like 12, 13 years ago, I thought I might be a pantheist of sorts. But then I realized what I was doing was grafting this layer of special onto the natural world that really isn't there. Hell, let's face it, I was essentially believing in the Force from Star Wars. And I looked around, I said, no, that's really not there. I'm just trying to make myself feel like the world is more special than it is, and I gave it up. It wasn't until later that I really became more of an active atheist. I had my YouTube channel. It was primarily for animation at the time. BionicDance is supposed to be the name of an animation company if I ever have one. There's sort of a Saturday morning cartoon origin to that name, but I won't get into that now. But then a friend of mine started directing me to all these atheist videos, people like DPR Jones, Thunderfoot, Aaron Ra, those folks. And I started having it pointed out to me a little more explicitly how religion has been mistreating people, how they're trying to get laws made that hurt people like me, for example. Being a lesbian, they don't much care for us homosexuals, those religious types, and so I started becoming a bit more active atheism scene. And the more I heard, the more I read, the more I listened, the more I watched The Four Horsemen, and boy, do I miss Christopher Hitchens. The more my atheism really solidified.
Okay. Well, and you said that at one point that you would have labeled yourself a pantheist. So would you consider that labeling yourself a theist in some regard?
No, not really. A pantheist is someone who looks at the universe and says this whole thing is divine. There's no intelligence to it. It's just we live in a divine universe. The universe itself is God. And I suppose you could say each one of us is almost like a synapse in the brain of this God universe thing. It's not conscious or anything. Like I said, it was kind of like believing in the Force from Star Wars in a way.
Gotcha.
And, anyone who knows me knows how much of a Star Wars fan I am. Hell, here's an R2-D2 beanie baby, and some of you have seen the Rebel Alliance tattoo. So that may have fueled some of it. I was just being a psycho fan. But like I said, I was just grafting the world and realized it was silly, so I stopped.
Okay. So now you made it through the introductory questions. Now we get on to the discussion. So For those of you, you've been referencing your YouTube channel, so I want to make sure that for the people that are not familiar with you that are watching this, that they have an opportunity to go to YouTube and go to your channel, and it is BionicDance, and just to check out your videos, because you put out these. What I consider you doing is you're engaging in atheism activism by putting out like nice, concise little well-articulated, very focused videos that are usually not more than like 10 minutes or so, and except for a few. And you really nail home a specific point, and it's either to address somebody else's topic or to address a specific topic that you bring up. So for those of you that are not familiar with Kate's work, I really recommend that you go to YouTube, check out BionicDance, subscribe, and get her nuggets of goodness like I do.
Thank you.
No doubt. I just wanted to make sure that got promoted, because I think it's important that people get to hear what you have to say. Now, speaking of getting
for the record,
yes,
I used to be a lot more of what I guess some people might charitably call a firebrand. Other people might have said a jerk. I've been trying to be a lot more civil in my videos lately. So if any of you watching this ever used to really be cranky with me, times have changed. Just saying.
No, well, I'd like to talk about that, because that's one of the things that I brought up with Aaron Ra was his process. And, I told him flat out that I love listening to his presentations. I love listening to his videos and watching them. I love watching him give presentations and do talks. But sometimes I have a problem listening to him debate, because something happens where he gets loud. He interrupts a lot, so his impulse control kind of goes to the wayside, and he screams a lot. So, and he was able to address it. He was so nice about it. He was just like, "Yep, I'm trying to not be like that, and I'm trying to guest host on this particular radio show, and they tell me after the show that my technique would work so much better if I just laid back a little bit to let the people I'm talking to give themselves enough rope to hang themselves, so that later I can pull the noose." So these are, so his point was, he's heard these criticisms before. So the fact that you said that,
I actually got to meet Aaron Ra at the American Atheist 50 convention in Austin, Texas earlier this year. He couldn't be the nicest, like a nicer guy. He just couldn't. He's really a great fellow to just hang out with.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. He's a really cool guy to have a beer with and chew the fat about just about anything. But you had admitted that you have had a little bit of a conversion in your process, not necessarily your content, but your process. Do you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Well, I will admit that I have a bit of a temper and a bit of a nasty streak. If I give someone several chances to, at least, if not to actually give in to my arguments, to at least take what I'm saying on board. Because there are a lot of times where you give your argument, they give their argument, maybe you make a rebuttal, but then they just reiterate their argument. What you say has no effect on their position at all, and that is deeply frustrating. So I give people a couple of chances, but if it's clear that they are talking to talk and they're not talking to me, I kind of start to get a little nasty, maybe sarcastic, maybe I start blasting them a little. It happens. But I've been trying to contain that, at least in my videos, a lot more. I'll download somebody else's video, start taking their points apart, and obviously they can't respond to me, in real time, because I'm just addressing. So, and so I try to be a bit less sarcastic, a bit less like rawr about it now. I try to, before I applied logic and reason just as much, but I did it with sort of a nasty, smirking, attitude. Sure. And I'm trying to moderate that now, because I realize, some people actually really like that. And some people seem, I don't know, like they have a bit more tolerance. Like I used to watch Coughlin 666. I guess he's 616 now. I don't watch him as much as I do, or as I used to, but he could get nasty with people and his audience would applaud. I do the same and people are like, oh, you're such a bitch. I don't know if it's a double standard when, it's like he's a guy, I'm not, if that has something to do with it. But for whatever reason, people didn't respond very well to that sort of thing. Some people did, but I'd say the vast majority didn't. And so I've kind of modified my behavior a little bit because, I do want people to hear the message. It's not so much about gaining subscribers, although my sub count seems to be going up a lot more than it used to. But I want to reach as wide an audience as possible because I have what I think is an important message. So if that requires modifying my behavior to get the message listened to, I'll do it.
Well, and that's great. I'm glad to hear that because that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to be on the show is to expose you to maybe a cohort of people that may be unfamiliar with you that, would like to hear the things that you have to say. Because here at the New Covenant Group, it is where atheists and theists come together to have civil and respectful conversations. And I love the fact that your content isn't changing, but maybe your process is so that you can reach a wider audience because I'm in total agreement with you. I think that the message that you have is worth being out there and distributed and marketed to as many people as possible. The one thing I did want to add is the fact that you're changing your process a little bit. There's a point that I was going to make, but I can't remember it right now, so I have to switch to plan B. The process that you were talking about previously, where you were maybe a little bit more curt, that might have been on display at a Google Plus Hangout that we all had with Matthew 4:19.
Oh gosh, him.
Yes. I'm not gonna belabor this point. But there is a specific, at the end of that, and for those of you that aren't familiar with this, it was a Google Hangout that had myself, it had Kate, it had Steve Shives, and the person who hosted it was a theist by the name of Matthew 4:19. And I think that you can see the actual Hangout on his channel. That's Matthew, the number 4, and the word 19 spelt out. And at the end, he gave everyone an opportunity to give a parting comment, and then when it came his turn, he proselytized for about 4 or 5 minutes. And it was at that point that Kate decided to leave the conversation. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that.
Well,
what was going through your mind?
Well, when most of us left our parting comments, we just sort of said our position a little bit. And that was it. But he actually, he didn't say, well, here's my opinion, let me describe it a little. He was preaching. Yes. And most of us were not there for that. We were there for a conversation. And it was pretty clear that that was all he intended to do. And I didn't want to be battered over the head with essentially improv scripture, Mm-hmm. If his parting comment had been, well, I still believe in a deity because, okay, fine. But I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to call what he did rude, but that's kind of how it felt.
Okay. I'm with you because I was at a weird place at that point, because I felt like I was his guest. So should I stay? Should I go? I saw 13 heathens kind of took his headset off and pointed to them, kind of illustrating like I've kind of had enough of this. And then it was very soon after that that you disconnected. Somebody else disconnected. I can't remember her name, maybe Robin. And so, that kind of seemed that at the end of the discussion anyway. But, as a guest, I thought that it was appropriate for me to just like hang out and see where he was going with it. Unfortunately, where he was going with it was exactly what you just said. So I essentially hung out for no reason, because he just proselytized for the sake of witnessing or testifying, and it was very frustrating because it was like a bait and switch. Because when we were afforded the opportunity to give a parting comment, we each took about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and kind of summarized our points and then moved on. And then he just took 4 or 5 minutes and really laid into scripture, like really laid into it in a packed house of atheists. So, and it just makes me wonder because I believe that he's one of the apologist flavors that believes that the Holy Spirit is the only thing that changes minds, not proselytizing. So it makes me wonder why they do such things.
I'm not even sure. It's weird because part of me wants to understand the theist mindset, and part of me thinks I never can.
Hmm.
And so if I were to know what he thought he was doing, I don't know. I mean, it just seemed like, well, I mean, like you said, it was at the end of the conversation. And as much as it was a Google Hangout, and I guess people watch those even if they're not participating, in a way, I kind of felt like it was more of a group Skype chat or something. I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I was on a show. And so I just felt I could leave without, really causing too much havoc. But gosh, what was he trying to do? I don't even know. I mean, if you're
He
trying
was telling
to
us to repent.
well, I mean, if you're trying to convert an atheist, or if you're trying to convince an atheist that your religion is correct, you're not going to do it with scripture, not ever. If you want to convince an atheist that you're correct, you're going to have to give us evidence. And I mean the kind of evidence we can go check for ourselves independently in the present day. You
Yeah.
can't throw scripture at us. You can't preach at us. You can't claim, well, here's a recorded miracle that we can't check.
It has
It's
to be
just
something
not
we
going
can
to work.
sink our teeth into, at
Exactly.
our
So
level.
so if he was proselytizing to a room full of atheists, I don't know what he thought he was going to accomplish. I mean, maybe he was, much like I do, speaking to the audience more than the people he was addressing directly. I mean, I look at my videos where I'm taking someone's points and ripping them to shreds. I don't think I'll ever convert the person that whose video I'm essentially poning. Right? I'm
Hmm.
talking to my wider audience. I mean, I have like 13,500 subs right now.
Hmm.
If those people hear what I have to say about this guy's position, that is really the mission I'm on. I'm not trying to convert one person. And I have had some people private message me saying that my videos, and also some other people's videos, but also mine, have convinced them that the religion they were following isn't real. So I know I'm on the right track. And I can only imagine how
Nice.
many people aren't sending me that message, but who have had the same experience. So if he thought he was going to convince a bunch of atheists by battering us over the head, I mean, I hope he was speaking to a wider audience, because I remember him.
Hmm. Well, and I remembered what I wanted to address earlier, and and it has to do with the fact that you hung up on that call made a statement, and I do think that the atheist community, quote air quotes, needs people to make statements like that, and I think that it's a difficult balance, to be an atheist activist and to make sure that you get your point out there without your process looking like it's angry. And this is something that Aaron Rock kind of touched on a little bit. So, you are a firebrand. You're passionate about what you talk about. Let's not talk about that in a pejorative way. Let's talk about it in a positive way, as a motivating force for getting what you have to say out there. What's wrong with that? But the question is, how do you balance it so that that passion doesn't come
Right.
across as aggression?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. There are definitely some things that we have every right to get angry about. I mean, there are people out there who say, my religion is correct. Not only are you atheists wrong, but every other religion is wrong. And we not only need to follow my morality, it has to be encoded in law so that
Mm-hmm.
everyone, even if they don't believe. I mean, I could just list off a couple. There's gay marriage, stem cell research, abortion. Heck, even when you can drink alcohol seems to be controlled by religion.
Yes.
Now granted, my alcohol tolerance is really low, 2 drinks, and I'm just done for the night. But there are other people out there who are, who are saying, look, why can't I get a drink before, like, what is it, 4 p.m. or some crazy thing like that? I don't know. I mean, I never really looked into the law myself because I drink so little. But, there are definitely people who are cranky about that. I think they call them blue laws, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So, yeah, I mean, there's plenty to get angry about when it comes to how religion interferes in our lives. And think, to get people motivated, because they have to be angry too in order to stand up and say enough is enough. But that's just the interfering part of religion. That's the protest part of atheism. There is also the convincing people that the world works a certain way, or at least that some of the claims that people make about how the world works cannot be justified. And that, a certain amount of dispassion is necessary, definitely.
Just to get your point across, I think, just to be able to get your points to the most amount of people, I think that the passion needs to be dialed down a little bit. But then, if you're being talked over, you want to make sure that your message is getting out. So it's nice to have that trick in your shirt pocket where it's just like, I'm going to engage in a normal conversation with you until you make me not have to. And then I'm going to pawn you. But usually conversations don't have to go that way, because I've noticed in this show I've had theists and atheists on, and the more I listen and the more they talk and the more we engage, the happier both parties seem with the way that the interview is going and the way that the discussion goes. So, with theists that I particularly disagree with, like last week, I'll be the first to admit that Paul Taylor was on from Creation Today, and I might have gotten a little more passionate or aggressive than I normally do, because I'm very passionate about science education and science literacy. And I think that people that use science to come up with conclusions that end up with that manifest as creationist conclusions are doing a disservice. So I might have allowed that passion to come to the forefront a little more than I wanted to. But, some days I'm better at it than others. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about your apositivism. Did I say that right?
No, apistivism.
Apistivism.
Yes.
Because,
which I know sounds kind of horrible because it sounds like it has the word piss in it. That bugs me a little bit. But unfortunately, that's the Greek word. I'm sorry, it's either pistis or pistis. I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, but it's pistis, and so calling yourself an apistivist sounds a little filthy, but that's the right word for it, I think.
Now that doesn't mean that you don't have faith, right? That just means
it depends on the kind of faith you're talking about.
Okay, so this is where the word game comes in, right? Where a bait and switch frequently happens, where somebody will be talking about faith and we colloquially mean it as trust, and then they're like, haha, you have a faith-based system, and now all of a sudden they're using it in the context of religion.
Right, exactly. It's a word game, a mind game. It's a way of basically cheating. And that's one of the things that I really hate when discussing things with theists, is a lot of the time, whether they mean to be or not, whether they know they're doing it or not, they do engage in a kind of dishonesty. It seems less like they're trying to discuss and more like they're trying to win, if you see the distinction.
Sure.
And, if they really want people to say, yes, you have a point, your religion is true, they're not going to do that. You can't. That's not a way to win converts if your audience is at all intelligent.
Okay. Yeah, well, that I think that point is made, when the whole presuppositional movement, they're looking to shut mouths, right? They're not looking to spread the word. They're not looking to do anything other than shut mouths. I mean, and that, Sci-10 has been quoted, has been filmed saying as much. We're not trying to get the word out. We're not trying to change minds. We're trying to shut mouths. So, I mean, what kind of discussion can you get into with somebody who explicitly admits things like that? So,
well, I'm not sure you can. I mean, there are certain religious groups, religious people that I've decided aren't worth it. The presuppositionalists are kind of one of those. I mean, there are some of their arguments where I think I can counter them, but not to them. No matter what I say, I don't think they're going to take what I have to say at all seriously. So why bother? You can point out to other people that they don't have a point, but there's no getting through to them, I don't think. There's other groups like the Westboro Baptist Church. They are people that I think we need to stop paying attention to because they are pathetic. I actually saw them protest here in Seattle once, and they waved their God hates fags placards for like 5-10 minutes and then bolted like scared rabbits. And I'm going, these are the people we're giving press to? That's it. That's all they do. This is pathetic. This is lame. There's no reason they deserve the kind of attention and press they've got. So, along with the presuppositionalists, I think we need to ignore them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we've pretty much come to the conclusion, or at least I have. They're too high maintenance, to have a conversation with. You have to agree to these terms that I don't agree to, and you have to justify things that you normally don't have to justify to anybody else just to have a conversation with them. It's too high maintenance for me. I like to have regular, intellectually honest conversations. So how can we, here's a viewer comment that just came in. How can we pay less attention to Westboro, hold on a second, when they are disrupting funerals?
Well, I guess what I really meant was stop giving them press, stop making them famous. It's not so much, if they're making nuisances of themselves, don't do anything. It's just a matter of don't put it on the news. Don't call the newspaper. Just, ignore them. I think if they stopped getting press, if they realized that we're not getting through to people, they don't care about us, there's a chance, I'm not counting on it, but there's a chance they may stop, that they may keep to themselves again. But as long as we're keeping them famous, as long as we're keeping them in the news, acting up and in public, that's all there is to it.
Okay. So let's get back to the faith thing. So depending on your use of the word faith, I mean, you would admit you have faith. I mean, let me just ask flat out. I mean, you have faith in love. You have faith in humankind and things like that, right?
I think I would have to narrow it down. I have faith in my friends, but in the world at large, oh no, goodness no. I think the vast majority of people, frankly, are stupid. And it may not be them as individuals. It may be once we all get together and start trying to work together, the collective IQ goes down or something. But I don't have faith in the world, no. I have faith in individuals. And again, it's not the belief without proof kind of faith. It's not the I believe this because I believe it, or I believe it because God said so, even though I have no evidence. It's not that kind of faith. I mean, when I have faith in my friends, it's because they've proved themselves worthy of it. They've shown that they can be trusted. They've shown that they can be counted on. And so I have a fairly reasonable amount of continue to behave in those ways that make them worthy of my trust. So even that is evidence-based faith, if such a thing can be said to exist.
Okay. That makes sense. I just wanted to dig a little deeper into that because, I mean, because it can be a word game, and to say that you don't have faith, I mean, you could easily swap out faith for trust and, do away with all the connotations of unverified belief that we usually use with faith, and I think that we would be talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the belief without evidence kind of faith that I won't have.
Okay. Well, let's move on to some of these closing questions because we have about 10 minutes left. And
that went quick.
I know, a good conversation usually does. So let's start with something super, super vague, and tell me what you think about this. Would the world be better off without theists?
I think it depends on how it happened, because obviously it would weigh on my conscience if we wiped them out with physical force. I don't want that. But if we could convince them to no longer believe in what they believe, I do think the world would be better. Doors to certain science, projects, experiments, or whatever would suddenly be opened because they wouldn't have so many stumbling blocks placed in front of us. Reproductive freedom would be something that we would have. And honestly, it just seems to me like there'd be a lot less paranoia, probably fewer wars, especially in the Middle East. I think it would definitely be a better world if the theists stopped being theists, yes.
And what evidence, speaking of being evidence-based, what evidence would disprove your worldview or position or stance?
Well, that's hard to say because at best, I think I could be convinced that there's a much higher probability that the theists had a point if I was presented with the right evidence, but I'm not sure that I would ever just say, yes, they're 100% right, no doubt. I mean, I am a skeptic in the classic sense of the word. I'm not a naysayer. I'm just someone who needs evidence before I'll say yay or nay. And that means that I always have the open possibility that I might have the facts incorrect, that there is a chance my interpretation is incorrect. And so, I'm always open to having my mind changed with facts and evidence, reason and logic. So that said, if I were to have evidence that, a God exists and some theist religion or other was correct, it would have to be scientific evidence, physical evidence, empirical, objective evidence. It can't just be, here's my fairy tale, believe it, believe it.
Mm-hmm. What question would you most want to be asked by a theist?
I've been thinking about this one. I honestly can't come up with any single question. Like, I can't just put it into a sentence. But if they could ask me a question that really was honest and forthright, that where they genuinely wanted to know, and it was not one of those trick questions to try to make it seem like they're right and I'm wrong because they're asking some, duplicitous question. I think that would have to be it. That would have to be the kind of question at the very least.
So you want it to be honest. You want it to be an honest question that springboards into a real discussion.
Oh, yes, definitely. And shows that they're open to having their mind changed.
Okay. And what would what question would you least want to be asked by a theist?
Well, much like the other one, it's hard to come up with something specific. I guess it would have to be the opposite, where it is one of those trick questions where they're going to play a word game on you or pull some sort of switcheroo. Those are fairly easy to spot, but, it's just there's no point having a discussion like that, So I suppose the question I would least want to have asked of me by a theist, besides would you like fries with that, is that sort of question, That
was good. What's the worst argument you've heard against your position?
Oh gosh, it's got to be the "God said it, I believe it, that settles it" kind of statements. It's like, that's an argument, really. And most of you have heard, is it Eric Hovind? I forget which one's the dad and which one's the son, but he says that all the time. And that's not an argument. I mean, he thinks it is. He thinks nailed it, but no, that's not an argument.
Yeah, it seems very interesting because for me, I'm interested in the psychology of what accounts for individual differences and perceptions to reality, right? And there seems to be people that really wear on their sleeve that they would like an authoritative worldview. They would like things handed down from an authority as compared to, and I think that I can lump you into this category, people who go from a more bottom-up approach. You see what I'm saying?
I think what it is that they want certainty. If you don't have a God, if you don't have not just the moral authority, not just the rules handed down to you, but also the knowledge of this is where we all came from, this is where we're all going, and that's it. If you don't have a God, you don't have that, and the universe suddenly becomes a much more uncertain and vague place where you don't know everything. And I think that scares a lot of people. I really do.
Yeah.
Then again, there's those of us who are intrigued by it. Those of us who look around and go, okay, we don't know everything. How much fun is it going to be to find stuff out?
How humbling is that to look out onto starry night and, be humbled by the fact that we don't quite have it all figured out and there is uncertainty. And how great is that?
Well, it's funny. I don't even really feel humbled by it. I feel, I don't know, sort of a sense of adventure, I guess. It's like, here is a great opportunity. Maybe I am an insignificant little speck, but damn it, I can make a difference. I can do amazing things. Maybe I'm not uber special, but within my little sphere of the world, I can do something that is special.
Yep. Excellent. So what's the best argument you've heard against your position?
Oh, gosh, I've been trying to think of this, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not a good argument. I mean, that's the problem. So many of these theists are believing in fairy tales and acting like they're real. So most of their arguments, I'm just like, really? That's all you got? Really? I'm trying to think of a good argument, and I'm
None of them
coming
have
up empty.
made you even think twice?
Not really, no. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm listening to what they say with an open but critical mind, and almost all of their arguments are terrible. It's weird.
Well, yeah, I agree that when they get into the details, a lot of the arguments break apart. But for me, I'm charmed by a couple of the arguments, not to the point where I'm like, oh man, I'm doubting myself, but it's just like, man, that's a fun little thought experiment. You know what I mean? Like, I've definitely come across people that have said things to me that make me go like, yeah, I'm going to chew on that for a little while. But I don't
Do you have an example?
Like the cosmological argument I find super interesting, just because no matter if even if I couch it within a multiverse, there has to be some catalyst for the beginnings of even those multiple verses. And right now I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around what the origins of those causes would be. I am not saying that a cause needs a causer, but I am having fun thinking about, like, okay, so maybe our universe might have been the consequence of a catalyst or two other multiverses smashing into each other. And okay, cool. Well, that just pushes the question off into the past a little further. And so I have fun thinking about that. Like, so what could have caused? What are we expanding into? Those kinds of questions make me think.
Well, but I mean, then you get into the whole infinite regress problem of,
yes.
I mean, you brought it up, the what caused the causer and all of that. And people just say, well, God is eternal, so he didn't need to have a cause. And I'm like, yeah, can you justify that?
Yeah,
that ends the thought experiment. This kind of argument where I'm just like, this is not a good argument. It sounds neat on the surface, but once you get down into the nitty gritty, they rely, they go back to scripture and faith, and I can't do it.
Yeah, I think that it's a good place to ask a question. I just don't like the place they take it. So I like thinking about it as a question.
That's the sort of thing I was talking about, though, when I said, look at all the things we can discover, all the things we don't know yet. I mean, if we can find the origin of the universe, I mean, number one, I'm sure a lot of religious people will completely deny it. They'll go like they'll lose their shit and say, no, you're wrong. But at the same time, those of us who do like science, who aren't, fettered by the binds or the bounds of religion, all of that, I think it will be really amazing for us to have that knowledge if we can ever get it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's move on to the last question. So, if you could choose somebody to answer the question, does God exist? What field would they be from?
Well, it would have to be physics and cosmology, definitely, because like we were just talking about, the origins of the universe and all that, I mean, that seems to be where religion comes from, is God started it all. So if we had like a cosmologist or a physicist who's looking into the does God exist problem, whether they start out pro or con, I think they are the most likely to find an answer.
Excellent. All right. Well, that sums it up for today. Thank you so much, Bionic Kate, for coming to hang out with me today for 50 minutes and having a good conversation about things and stuff, both things and stuff. I'm going to be recording a little bit of a post-show wrap-up, and I'm going to be putting that on my YouTube channel. So for those of you that are not familiar with where to go there, you can go to YouTube, and my channel is user//Mauteman, MAUTMAN. Also, as soon as this video is uploaded to the New Covenant Group's Facebook page, I'm also going to mirror it on my my YouTube page as well, is what I meant to say. Also, if you wanted to join the conversation, you can go to Facebook and join the group at Meeting of the Minds on Facebook. Thank you once again, Kate. And hopefully I'd like to very much keep an open invitation extended to you, because I think that there are many different topics that you and I could have an awesome discussion about.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was fun.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.